about this thing called point slope form. Now, I'm going to give you a hint. I would only use this form if you have this thing called a point and if you have this thing called a slope. So only use this if and only if you have a point and a slope. So here's the formula. Ready? You're going to say y minus your first y value equals n, which is your slope, times x minus your first x value. And this right here is the formula for point slope. Now, if you write that in your journal, you don't have to memorize it. You just have to know how to use it. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do next, I'm going to highlight where things go. All right? So if you have 3 different colors, that would be awesome. Because right now, I'm going to label this little guy right here my x1. I'm going to label this little guy right here my y1. And this little guy right here, I'm going to call, that's my n value. So I'm going to highlight it. So here we go. My n value is a 3. So I'm going to plug that guy in right there. All right? My x value right here is a 1. So I'm going to plug him in right here. This is where it gets a little bit tricky because it's a -3. So I got to take this y1 value right here. And I got to plug him in right there. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, so make sure you guys see what I'm doing here. I'm going to say y minus, and once again, I'm going to open up a parenthesis where I want to place my first y value. Okay? That's important because it's y minus, but what number am I going to plug in? 3. -3. Okay. All right. Equals my slope. Now, what's my slope? 3. So put 3 right there. I'm going to open up a parenthesis. I'm going to say x minus, and once again, after I say x minus, I'm going to open up a parenthesis to plug in my x1 value, which is a 1. So let me highlight what we did here. I plugged in my y1 right here. I plugged in my slope right here. And I plugged in my x1 value right there. I realize you see a whole lot of parentheses, but why did I put parentheses there? To make sure I knew. Right. I want to make sure that I knew I was plugging things in correctly. This is where students will make a mistake. There's a negative here. There's a negative here, so what's going to happen to those suckers? Positive. So this actually becomes, everybody, a y plus 3 equals 3 times x minus 1. Now, I really didn't have to worry about this one. This is pretty easy because it's just a positive. Okay? Now, using order of operation, what's the next step order of operation? Distribute. You have to distribute the 3 to both numbers. Okay? So on the left side, we have y plus a 3 equals, and on the right side, we're going to have a 3x minus a 3. Because we distributed the 3 to the x and the 3 to the -1. We're really close. Yes, absolutely. So how do I get rid of this guy? Just subtract the 3 and subtract the 3. And y equals the final answer of 3x minus 6. This right here is my answer in slope-intercept form. Now, point-slope form only works if you have a what? A point and a slope. This is not the only method of solving this. So what I'd like, this was your example for point-slope form, all right? So Jacob, make sure you're writing this down, all right? Because now, we're going to do the exact same problem, except, everybody, instead of using point-slope form to solve this problem, we're actually going to use slope-intercept form to solve this same problem. So in your journal, I want you guys to write number 8, except this time we're not going to title it point-slope form. This time we're going to title it slope-intercept. I'm giving you 2 ways to look at things, okay? So we're going to use y equals mx plus b to eventually get our formula in y equals mx plus b. Our slope is still equal to 3. What was our ordered pair once again? What was the ordered pair that was given to us on number 8? 1, negative 3? Okay, so right now, we'll put 1, negative 3. So we're using the exact same information, okay? Except this time, I want you to just label this x. Instead of x1, just label it x. Instead of y1, just label it y. Once again, I'm going to highlight some things. Since I've been keeping the slope green, I'm going to still keep it green and color that in. For my x value, I'm going to shade it in blue. For my y value, I'm going to shade it in red. And this is my preferred method of taking information and finding slope-intercept form. You don't have to use this method. You can use point-slope form if you want. Okay. This one, I think, makes it a little bit less complicated. Basically, in this whole process right here, here's what we're solving for. We are solving for b, which is your y-intercept. Okay? Because right now, what's our equation? Before we even solve it, our equation is y equals 3x plus a what? Plus a b. If you have the slope, right, you can write y equals 3x plus b. All we need to find is the what? The y-intercept. Except this time, watch what we're going to do, Jordan. We've already plugged in a 3 right there, right? But this time, look what number I'm going to plug in for x. What am I going to plug in? I'm going to plug in a 1. And what number am I going to plug in for y? So here's how it works. For y, we're going to plug in a negative 3. We already have this 3 right here. For the x, we're going to plug in a 1. And we're just going to say plus b. Negative 3 equals 3 plus b. And what's the only step I have to do, basically? Just subtract 3, right? On both sides. That zeroes out. And what is my b value? Negative 6. Okay, right here, we had negative 3 equals 3 plus b. Okay? So, what we did was we had to subtract 3 from both sides because we're trying to solve for the b. Okay? So our final answer is once again 3x minus a 6 if we plug it in. Either way, you get the right answer. All right? One of them, what did we have to do? We had to go up, if we go back up here, notice here we had to label this x1, y1, and we had to plug them in correctly. Here, we didn't have to label them x1, y1, but we still had to do what? We had to plug them in. What does this save you? This saves you from having to what? Distribute things, correct? All right? Saves you a little bit of time and energy, I think. All right? Here you're solving for b. But you still need what? You still need a slope first, right? So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and look at number 10. Okay? So right now, what I'd like you to do right now is take number 10, and I'd like you to guys go ahead and solve it from beginning to end. Okay? Go ahead and solve it. And we'll check it here in a few short minutes. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to look at number 10, and we are going to eventually get to this concept called slope-intercept form. We're going to take those 2 points, and we're going to write the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope, b is your y-intercept. Now, we don't have a slope, and we don't have a y-intercept. Okay? So the very first thing I would probably want you to find is the slope. So the very first thing that I would want you to do is I want you to label your points, x1, y1, x2, y2. So start with organizing. Okay? Then we're going to use the slope formula. And remember when I asked you to use the slope formula, I wanted you to use parentheses to plug things in. This represents my y2 value. This represents my y1 value. There's your x2. There's your x1. All right, so now that you have everything organized, you can see that your y2 value is a 1, so we're going to plug in a 1. And your y1 value is a negative 2, so we're going to plug in a negative 2. Your x2 value is a negative 3. And your x1, or your first x value, is a negative 1. Now, the reason why I want you to use parentheses is so that your brain can recognize when you have two negatives right next to each other. You can say, hey, I need to change that to a positive. And once again, we have it in both cases, don't we? We've got a negative and a negative, which changes it to a positive. So now, in the numerator, we have what? We have a 1 plus a 2. 1 ends up being a plus a 2. And in the denominator, we have negative 3 plus a 1. So in the numerator, we get 1 plus 2, which is 3. The denominator, we get negative 3 plus 1, which is a negative 2. So our final slope is negative 3 over 2. Now, whether you get a negative in the numerator or the denominator, either way, it's going to be a negative slope. So put m equals negative 3 over 2. So right now, let's write our equation with what we have. Ready? Here's our equation. If I wanted to write this in slope-intercept form, I would write y equals negative 3 over 2x plus b. So really, what's the only thing that we need to solve for now? We have the slope. We need the what? We need the y-intercept. So we have the slope. There it is. We just need the y-intercept. So what we're going to do is I need to choose a point. I don't have to use both of them. I can choose this point or I can choose this point. Which one would you guys like to choose? Both of them negative? Okay, we'll use both these negatives, okay? So I'm going to choose the point. I'm going to choose the ordered pair, what? Negative 1, comma, negative 2. Now I'm going to take this negative 1, which represents which value? That's my x value, and I'm going to plug it in right there for x. All right? And then I'm going to take the negative 2, which represents my y value, and I'm going to plug him in right here for y. So let's see what we get. Oh, sorry. So now, what is my y value? Let's say what? Negative 2. We're going to put equals. My slope of negative 3 over 2. I'm going to open up a parentheses. What number am I plugging in there? Negative 1. And then I'm going to add the b value, which I'm solving for. Remember, we're solving. Solve for your y-intercept. That's the only thing we need to find. Almost done. We have plenty of time. This right here is a negative 2. This is equals. What is negative 3 over 2 times a negative 1? What's that going to be? Just positive 3 over 2. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Now some of you, I realize some of you don't like fractions, but that's okay because we speak both fraction and decimal. That's right, we speak both fraction and decimal. So 3/2 is just simply a 1.5. It's 1.5, right? So if I wanted to solve for b, I only have one step to go. I have to get rid of 1.5 on one side and get rid of 1.5 on the other side. And when you combine these, you get negative 3.5, which equals my b value. Now, by the way, the fraction that's equivalent to that is just negative 7 over 2. And that's the fraction that's equivalent to it. So if I have y equals mx plus b, what was our final slope? It was negative 3 over 2. What was our final y-intercept? Negative 3.5 or negative 7 over 2. There's your action. Right? There's your answer as a fraction. Here is your answer as a decimal. Okay? So either way, if you put things as an improper fraction or put things as a decimal, they are both correct. They just are different forms. You have to know how to change things back and forth. Okay? That's something that you need to get better at. I hope you watch this, Jacob, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow.